Hey guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome to all my new followers. This week we're going to talk about the importance of printing your photos. I think it's very important. It's going to give you greater appreciation for your own workflow, and I absolutely believe that printing your photos is going to make you into a better photographer. Whether you print from 35 or all the way from 8 by 20, it doesn't matter. Printing your photos is going to give you a greater appreciation. Now, I'm definitely, I've always been a 35 millimeter guy. I believe 35 millimeter will always be good enough for me. You can see it in this first print here, guys. You might recognize this from a former video. Trying to take glare out of it for you guys. It's fantastic. Of course, from viewing distance, which is about a foot to 2 feet away, it looks great. Once you start, sticking your nose up into it, when you're pixel peeping, your hair splitting, then yes, you will see some lessened sharpness, but not at viewing distance. It looks perfectly fine. And actually, if you do pixel peep a little bit, it's pretty impressive. You will get a renewed appreciation for 35 millimeter all over. I think that seeing prints of 35 millimeter all the way up to 20 by 30 is great because you're going to see where in your workflow you need to make certain adjustments. For me, a long time ago, I figured that out. It's absolutely, the Epson V550. It's still good enough for what I need it for, but eventually, if I want to go to a 20 by 30 print and have some decent amount of detail in that print, I definitely need to step away from the Epson V550. And for me, I've already decided that's going to be DSLR scanning of the actual print. I might not all the way step away from the Epson V550 because I think it's still handy in scanning a whole roll and archiving your photos, because not every photo you're going to print big. Only a certain amount of photos you're going to print big. I think it's important, though, to sometimes think in terms of, for everybody to each their own. Whatever you use your photography for, that's completely up to you. But I think it's important for certain projects, or sometimes to get into the mindset of, hey, I'm going to set out to make a print. I definitely did that with this shot here, which, let me pull that up, guys. This print, another, in my opinion, beautiful 20 by 30 print. Doesn't even fit all the way on the screen here. But I definitely set out to make a print here. We had snow in Texas. I wanted to capture that. I knew of some places where it would be really nice. And I knew that on a certain given day we were going to get blue skies, which that's pretty, rather than the dull, the bland skies. So I set out, and on that day I had Cinestill 50D. Cinestill 50D is an absolute wonderful film for landscapes. And if you want to print it a little bigger, it's sharp. And in the future, I might actually rescan this specific negative in order to see how much more resolution I can get out of it. But I think it's important that once you print your photos, you're going to see that, I need to make an adjustment here. Any sort of error in exposing definitely is going to show up. In that respect, it's going to make you into a better photographer. And if you have the print a little bigger, you're definitely going to see like, I should have composed this maybe a little bit different. Even your little bitty 4x6 prints, which often I do kind of use as proofs, to kind of look at the bigger picture. But if you're in the mindset, no pun intended, if you're in the mindset of, hey, I want to print that photo bigger, you're going to get better results overall. If you're in the mindset of, hey, I want to really see what this looks like at 20 by 30, you're going to get into a completely different mindset. And you probably don't need that for every type of photography that you're doing. Last week, I did a POV. That was more of a documenting style thing where none of those pictures I'm going to print big. That's just a record I want to have, a photographical record, and that's just fine. But at some point in your journey into photography, you're going to want to have some of your artwork, and I say that with some caution, you're going to want to have your artwork hanging up in your house or your home or wherever you live. And so when you set out with that mindset of, hey, I have to create this print, a workflow is involved. And so when you print a little bit bigger, you're going to see where the bottlenecks are. Oh, maybe this lens isn't as sharp. Maybe I need to shoot from a tripod. Maybe I should have waited for better light here. Maybe I should have picked a better time of the day to come back and taken that photo at that time of the day. Or maybe I should have did spot metering instead of letting the camera decide what to meter for me. All those kind of things come into play. Maybe I should have used a different developer in case of black and white. I still haven't gotten into developing color. I will do that in the future. But for black and white, maybe I should have used a different developer. This photo, going back to this photo from the Greyhound, that's developed in DDX, which now in retrospect definitely lends itself really, really well to printing bigger because you get this fine detail. And you know, even with this photo, you can see just an amount of grain that's just pleasing enough at that, you know, at that size, at 20 by 30. And those are all things that come into play when you print your photo. No, for some of us, printing is financially prohibitive. So I get that. I still would like to try, you know, for those, print 4x6s. You can still get a 20 by 30 that's not very expensive and still high quality. And I'm talking inkjet prints. I'm not talking going into the darkroom, which I've only done on a handful of occasions. But for right now, we're talking inkjet prints. And darkroom printing is definitely fantastic. It's phenomenal and something I'm definitely going to get into again in the future. And I'll take you guys along for that ride. But right now, inkjet printing is definitely really great to get your prints done, and you're still going to learn a lot from that. You're still going to learn, hey, I need to adjust this. You're going to start to think in terms of backtracking a little bit and not always, oh, I have to pre-visualize, but you're going to think in terms of, hey, maybe this is the lens that I should use here, or maybe I should start, sell all this crappy glass and put that down as a down payment to one single really great lens to where I get more resolution, I get better quality out of that. Or, hey, maybe I should start printing with a different film, because printing your photos will definitely give you an appreciation for that certain film stock. Like, for instance, this shot here, again, guys, you might recognize that, my beautiful girlfriend. This is Pro Image 100, and film which people say that is not professional. If you can't sell this, you know, in a professional workflow at 20 by 30, then I don't know what you can sell. People say this isn't a professional film. Well, yeah. You know how I feel about it? You can see that. Incredible sharpness at 20 by 30 from a 35 millimeter negative. Incredible density. I've never had somebody come into my home and say, oh, hey, Davey, you shot that photo with Pro Image 100, and that's not technically a professional film, even though it is, but you shot it on that and with that lens, and that's why I don't like that photo. That hasn't happened. You will absolutely be able to gain a bigger appreciation for a certain film stock. Printing in itself is also fun. The anticipation of, hey, it's coming back. Whether you do it at home or you had them printed like I do, at this stage I still think that there are others that are better than me in printing a photo. That's why I use a printing service. And it just saves a little bit of time as well in the overall process. But whether you do it yourself or you have it done, you're going to gain a deeper appreciation for your own workflow, for photography as an art. Because personally, I believe I'm in the camp of that it's only an art when you're printing it. Then it becomes a tangible object, and art can only be a tangible form, in a tangible form for me. That's my opinion. You might think something different, but I don't think I'm looking at art when I'm looking at a picture on Instagram. It has to be something tangible, and that's why I said it with caution, because especially in the darkroom, there are guys that are absolute artists that can print with art and that know where to dodge and burn and know how to do all those things. I think that's where photography becomes art. Do I think that these specific set of prints are art? Maybe. That's up to you to decide. But you know what I'm trying to say. When it becomes tangible, it becomes so much more open for your appreciation, becomes so much more of a goal to pursue. So, and again, whether it's a really small print or you go all the way up to, excuse me, whether it's a really small print or you go all the way up to 20 by 30 or even bigger than that, it doesn't matter. Just print out a few photos, guys, and start thinking in terms of, hey, if I would have taken this photo, would somebody pay me $50, $60, $500 or $600 for this print? Would somebody do that? If you start thinking in those terms, you're definitely going to start looking at things a little more carefully. I once learned of a photographer, this was in the early 2000s, I read about him. He spent literally all day, he was a photographer who shot on film out of Belgium, I forget his name, but he would spend all day on creating just one photo. He shot with models, but he would spend all day being so careful to have that one single careful exposure. And I think that speaks volumes to how you can approach photography. You know, if you're spray and pray, that's perfectly fine. We all do that sometimes. But if you think in terms of, hey, I'm going to print this photo and I want it up on the wall and I want 50,000 people to see it, versus 100,000 people seeing it on a little bitty screen on Instagram, you're definitely going to gain a bigger appreciation for every single step that's involved in creating that print, whether it is your lens, your meter, your photo, your developer, the way you print it. Maybe you need a different inkjet printer, all that kind of stuff. It's just going to make you into a better photographer. Well, guys, this is my case for printing your photos. I hope you learned something from that. And I would love to hear from you in the comments whether or not you print your photos. And how often do you do that? And do you do it at home or do you get it done? I don't think that really matters whether you do it at home or you get it done. But print your photos, guys. Guys, I love you, and I'll see you next week in the next episode.